All right.
Prize picks. How many picks did you make? Because I got 4.
Prize picks time.
Yeah.
I have 3
Okay.
picks.
I'll do 3 and then a bonus one.
I'm such a ween when it comes to this stuff, man. I talk myself into something and then I just decide that I'm going to be wrong.
Sure.
Like I love doing the daily fantasy stuff with Prize Picks. It's super fun. I've been on there every single day, jumping through all the different sports, watching college football on Saturday, jumping on Prize Picks. I have the app. You can also go to prizepicks.com/candlestick. And if you use promo code candlestick while you're there, they'll match your deposit up to $100. And I'm on Prize Picks and it's great. They have first half stuff. They have second half stuff. So I got in late on the Colorado-Nebraska game, but I got an entry put together for the second half of that one. And it's just a way more fun way to watch sporting events that don't involve teams that you like or cover.
Yeah.
And so the daily fantasy element of all this has been super fun.
The more than or less than, yardage stuff is super fun to play. And you can do flex plays, you can do power plays. The flex play is safer. Like you can make 4 plays and you can miss one but still cash in, whereas a power play is exponential, right? So you have to hit all of them to hit, but it's, and you can cash out at like 5x multiples, even more, depending on how many entries you play. So yeah, it's super fun. It was a little frustrating last week with Kenny Pickett hitting the more than like late in the game in garbage time, but I feel good about my picks again this week. I felt good about them last week. I think I would have cashed out if I did a flex play rather than a power play. But I'm liking what I got so far this week.
See, that's where I always go flex play because I don't believe in myself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Thanks.
That's fair.
All right. I'm going to start with mine. And
I believe in you. Can we say that? I believe in you.
Thanks, dog. Preach. So the first entry I have on my entry is I have Christian McCaffrey more than 66.5 rushing yards. And I was looking this up today. Christian McCaffrey, since Brock Purdy took over in week 13 last year, has 3 games where he has fewer than 66.5 rushing yards. One was a blowout win over Washington, where he only played 75% of the snaps. There was the week 18 blowout win against Arizona, where he played half the snaps. And then there was the playoff game against Dallas, where Dallas's defensive line cooked. Other than that, he's gone well over 66.5 rushing yards in all of them. So I'm going with more than 66.5 rushing yards for Christian McCaffrey.
I like
it. Second, I have Deebo Samuel, more than 50.5 receiving yards. The fact that he only had 5 catches last week for, I think it was 55 yards, makes me think that this might be a big game for Deebo. He always seems to kill the Rams. He might get 50.5 on one short throw that he breaks 6 tackles and takes to the house. So I really like Deebo to have a big week this week. I'm going more than 50.5 yards there. And then
I also have that one. Can I just say,
yeah,
Deebo has more catches, more yards, and more touchdowns against the Rams than any other team. And he catches 81% of his targets against the Rams typically. So yeah, 48 targets, 39 catches, 555 yards, 6 total touchdowns. I also have Deebo in the more than yardage play. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about why, but I think this is going to be like an example of like, oh, Brandon Ayuk went off one week, Christian McCaffrey went off, and then the next week it's Deebo and it's somebody else. I think it's going to be game plan and matchup specific. Like the Niners, as good as they are from like a fantasy perspective, might end up being really frustrating because you're like, oh, Ayuk blew up. Like I'm just going to play him every week, and then it's like, yeah, he was a little quieter while Deebo or someone else went off.
Yeah, and I think Deebo just plays, and this is one of those stupid football things that I can't quantify, but I think Deebo just plays a brand of football the Rams can't play. It just, they don't ever seem inclined to match his tenacity. At least in the instances I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Even was it week 2 last year, the Monday night game against the Rams, where he had that sick leaping catch and then broke a bunch of tackles and scored a touchdown.
It
And
wasn't. It was that was an early October game.
Okay, so it was early in the year.
It wasn't week 2, but early in the year. Yeah.
And that was Debo when he was quote unquote awful and sluggish. So I'm right there. There's so much versatility with this offense. I think 50.5 receiving yards, more than 50.5 receiving yards is a lot.
He averages 79.3 receiving yards against the Rams.
Oh, jeez, that's wild.
So.
My third selection here is Rams tight end Tyler Higbee. I'm going less than 45.5 receiving yards. It's really hard for tight ends to get loose against the 49ers. So, no pun intended.
Sure, I like that one. All right, I went Matt Stafford more than 228.5. I just think this game has a chance
of garbage time
to get away from the Rams, and there could just be like Stafford throws for 150 yards in the fourth quarter.
I really like that pick by you.
Yeah, 228.5 just seems like a really low number, and it might not even be indicative of like how the game goes. Like the Niners could dominate the game, and then like we look up and like, oh, Stafford threw for like 280. That's not that bad, but like I said, like 150 of them come in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I went Debo more than 50.5 receiving yards. I think that's a layup based on all the information we've had. George Kittle, I have more than 40.5 receiving yards. I just think it's, like the same thing that we say about Debo sort of applies to Kittle in that like he generally plays really well against the Rams, and a lot of his in terms of like opponent stats, a lot of his best numbers are against the Rams. And like the reason I said, like, I think Ayuk could be a little quiet this week because we see Debo and Kittle go off. Okay. I think that's what it's going to look like. Cause like Kittle, it felt like was not really part of the passing game because he was needed to block a lot last week. And it feels like, the pendulum will swing the other way a little bit on that this week. So those are my three. My bonus one, Cam Akers, fewer than 32.5 rushing yards. And this is solely about the fact that I think Kyron Williams is going to end up leading them in carries.
Okay.
So I don't think the Niners are going to give up many rush yards at all. But if they do, I think Kyron Williams is going to be the guy that gets more carries than Akers. So I'm going as a bonus pick, fewer or less than 32.5 rushing yards for Cam Akers.
One of the things I learned on PrizePicks is that they don't do, and this is why I like your Stafford pick even more, they don't do net passing yards. So they don't take away the yards lost for a sack. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think another big key to the game is just like you hit Stafford.
That might be wrong.
You hit Stafford once or twice, like early on. Like it's he's the type of quarterback at this point in his career where you hit him hard once or twice, and he's tough as hell, right? This isn't to say he's not tough, but like you hit him early on, and it could impact him for the rest of the game. He's just dealt with so many different injuries, and all the credit in the world to him. He plays through all of his injuries, but like he's definitely the type of dude where you could get him early in the game and it sort of sets a tone. Like, and he just can't get comfortable because he's taking shots. And that's ultimately what happened in Seattle, right? Like you pointed it out, they didn't hit him hardly at all. They didn't move him off his spot. And so he was able to get real comfortable in the pocket. He's the type of guy where given the injuries that he's dealt with, you can rough him up a little bit. And I think that's how you get some picks late in the game too. Yeah.
Starts getting rid of the ball a little bit early, starts bringing his eyes down, looking at the defensive line. I'm right there with you. And it feels like Stafford is good for 2 interceptable passes a game, at least, just by virtue of being a gunslinger and trying to either take a shot or trying to fit a ball in a tight window. Yeah, I think the game script is really, really nice for your picks.